Let's do this. Recording is starting now.
Hey guys, how's it going? I am interviewing the lovely and wonderful, amazing party animal, Erin Cohn. Welcome, Erin. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Lily, for having me.
So for those of you who don't know, Erin is pretty much very famous, I would say, for his epic shabasim, his onegs and meals. So Erin, that's actually how we met, if you remember, back in the day.
True,
I
I
was
remember.
invited to one of your your amazing Shabbat onegs, and something that kind of sets you apart is that you don't care about anyone's religion. You don't care about their sex. You don't care if they're gay. You don't care if they're straight. You just want everyone in the world to come to your home and experience the beauty of Shabbat. So how did that start?
Good question, Lily. Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, I guess it started when I was in, I think, Yeshiva University. I think I lived in an apartment with a few people over there. And we just used to have, I think a few times we threw a big Shabbat. We just invited as many people as we could. And I think like there's a certain refreshingness that comes from like not having a place to kind of host Shabbat and have guests. And then when you have that space, you feel it's like such a luxury that you really want to be able to bring people into that space and elevate it in a certain sense. So like I've lived in like basement apartments too. And like when I was cooped up in the basement apartment, I really wish that I had this space to kind of host. And once I was able to kind of then move into an apartment where that was suitable, and not only was it suitable, it was I guess I'd say perfectly. I'm very blessed in the sense that I have a place that I can have people. So I try my best to have as many people as possible. And I know what it's like to, need a place to go or feel like, you don't really have a place. So I want to be able to provide and share that with other people that they always feel they have a place to go to. And to the most of my ability, I try to make it comfortable for people. And I also don't feel like, I also don't like I also very much believe in um, not trying to like be exclusive in a sense. I don't like to use that word. I get how some people want to have dinner parties with, you're having a certain amount of guests. You want to prepare, you want to make everyone comfortable. I get that. But for me, I'd rather just, I always have the philosophy there's always room for one more. So I always try to embrace that. And one more then turns into 10 more, then it turns into 20 more. So I think I reached a certain point where I was able to kind of figure out a good system to just cook as much as I can and have some sort of control. But for the most part, I don't think anyone's gone hungry. I don't think anyone's gone thirsty either. And I believe there's always room for one more.
Aw. Well, wow, that's amazing. I mean, I didn't even I know you for this amount of time, and I didn't realize that was one of your driving philosophies when you host. That's really truly special. You have like when I say everyone comes to your Shabbat meals, I mean everyone. Like I'll never forget that Buddhist individual who came to your party and told me that he studied finance. Shout out to him wherever he is. I'm not sure what his name is, but he made me laugh so much that night. And there's just like all sorts of people who come, like people that you met at bars, people that you met in Uber rides. Like it's just
shout out to Ben Young.
Shout out to Ben Young. Oh my God, if you're watching, we love you. Just really really truly special. And I'm really like very inspired by just the openness. Like I really see you as like someone who's truly open-minded in every area of your life, not limited to Shabbat. Like that extends to your music. Like, can you talk about that?
Well, I'll answer the first part and I'll get to the music part. But thank you, Lily. That's a very beautiful compliment. I guess for me, I'm very comfortable with myself. I know who I am. Sometimes I forget, but for the most part, I know who I am. And some people find that a little abrasive. They find I'm very extroverted. I like meeting new people. I like meeting new friends. I really try to be genuine about how I engage with people. I don't like shallow relationships. Sometimes they persist. I try my best to deepen them to the best I can. And I think having some sort of openness with myself is a way that I can do that. And I feel that obviously maybe I wouldn't necessarily invite someone I met 5 minutes ago and spoke to for 30 seconds, but if I'm meeting somebody and I'd like to give, I like to extend my hand of friendship and sincerity and connectiveness in a sense. And I can do that by inviting them for Shabbat. So I find that to be very, to be able to kind of
Wow.
like really cultivate real relationships with people. And I think that's probably why I have such an eclectic group of people. And I think that's why everyone enjoys coming to Shabbat too, because I think everybody
Hmm.
is open to that. And, there's someone that they met and they're willing to kind of deepen a relationship. They're going to be meeting other people that have that same mentality too. And vicariously through the environment.
Hmm.
So I guess that's kind of like how I engage in people. And I think the people who engage with me are bound to find other people to engage that in that manner. And I think that's why it's always been a very beautiful experience for everyone who comes. And I try my best to make it uplifting and engaging. And I think for the most part, it works out. And I'm looking forward to doing it after Corona.
Yeah, no doubt. I look forward to hopefully coming again after Corona, because this is just a mess. This is like a hot mess. Um, so yeah, but I did want to get back to the second part of the question, which is some of your musical abilities. You're actually an excellent mandolin player. And how did you learn? What inspired you to pick it up? Like, can you
So I'll
talk
get
about
to
that?
firstly, it's an interesting story I'll share with you about the mandolin, but I guess in terms of the openness of music, I like, I mean, maybe I'm full of shit for saying this, but like, I kind of like putting, for music is a creative outlet for me. So I rather, instead of making it repetitive and just repeating other things that have happened, I try to mesh and engage with people to kind of cultivate some sort of newness or some sort of exploratory song. So that's kind of how I embrace music. That's why I love jams. In terms of the mandolin, I kind of started learning. I'm going to pause this for a second. Hold on 1 second. You hear that in the background? I think Ben's got it.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm going to pause this for a second.
By the way, oh, we're
Resumed.
back. We are
Yes, sorry
back.
guys. I just have some salmon in the oven. In terms of the mandolin story, just to answer Lily's question, thank you for asking. It's a good story. So I had a cousin, Aaron Lightstone from Canada, and he's actually a music therapist. He's a very prolific musician. He's actually Israeli folk musician in Toronto. And by his wedding, he had the most beautiful wedding. When he was getting married to his wife, he was playing his instrument at the time while she was walking down the aisle. And I thought that was a very beautiful moment, seeing him, that he had this craft and this song and this soul of, and he was able to kind of like share that with obviously his fiance, now wife, but also with the entire audience. And I thought that was a very beautiful experience just to witness. And I thought at that moment, like I had to kind of pick up a instrument. My mom at the time, she's like, "Oh, he plays mandolin." I was like, "Oh, okay." So they eventually got me like a $50 mandolin online. I started learning. Eventually, when I became more knowledgeable in music and instruments, my cousin did not play the mandolin. He played something called the oud, which is a Mediterranean
Mm.
instrument. So it's kind of funny that I play the mandolin based off of misconception. But a few years later, here I am.
Well, you made it your own, like your interpretation of the
I
oud
guess I
was
was
the
meant to
mandolin.
play it right. I don't
That's
have
awesome.
to. Mhm.
Yeah, well, actually, you have your Monday night jams, which is very like honestly for me, that gave me something to look forward to. When I was working in Flatbush before Corona, I just thought about like coming to you, and that gave me like something to look forward to. It was like, wow, like this is really like, and also even with that, like, can you talk about how you came up with that idea?
Sure. I'll tell you how I came up with it, and I also have a kind of funny point to mention. I was in the park yesterday, just a segue before we get to that. And I was just playing I brought a guitar, and someone walks over, and is like, "Hey, you want to jam sometime?" I'm like, "Yeah." So the discussion was like, obviously it's hard to really engage musically with people indoors, but we'll see. I mean, this is a gentleman I've never met him before. We exchanged numbers, but I told him like, hey, maybe 6 o'clock, weather permitting, we could just get together in the park, keep our distance, and start jamming. So we're gonna start doing that, see how that picks up. But in terms of the Monday night jam, that
That
really
is
came out.
really awesome.
Yeah, and that's kind of how I kind of approach things. Like I really um, I strive for genuine interactions with people and real relationships. I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but it's tough. I mean, I guess I have my fair share of people who talk a lot but don't do much. So I try to do the opposite. That's
Right.
why
No,
I have a little bit of a tough love. I have a bit of a tough
I
love. Now, in terms of like the Monday Night Jam, I think the thing that I experienced, and I know a lot of my musicians also experience, they're much way more talented than me. I'm kind of not that good. The thing is, like, we go to a lot of concerts, and it's beautiful what concerts are. You know, they're a spirit of unity, of community, and it's everyone's singing the same song, unifying, everyone's getting into it. But as a musician, you lack the ability to kind of like embellish and kind of like create on that. Is because it's extremely. I don't want to use the word repetitive, but it's extremely monotonous in a sense that you're kind of playing a prearranged songs, and there's like one person leading in, and you're supposed to play chords. You're just chord chopping while everyone's doing karaoke. So we have a joke called "Comes this karaoke," because I think it's great. It's 100% an incredible thing. I'm on that. Like, I love going. There's a time for concerts for me, for sure. But also, I felt as a musician there wasn't such a good space for people to be able to explore musically without judgment, without an audience, without someone coming up to sing "Stairway to Heaven" because they can't play an instrument. And I'm not against singers or anything. It's just that they kind of take the concerts and they turn it into a karaoke, or maybe it is by definition a karaoke. People just want to sing their songs, and I think that's great. But I think there needs to be a space for people to just explore musically with other musicians, have fun, get weird, and don't feel the pressure of needing to perform for
But
other
that's the
people.
thing, the getting weird, honestly, you know what? That took me a long time. Because for a long time, I personally did not want to get weird. I'm like, I'm gonna stick to what I know. I'm not about to be weird. I'm about to just be, regular and not be weird. And then it took me time until I got comfortable with the weirdness. And it takes a certain amount of time to really let it digest and actually express how weird you are and try new things. But then that is really where you find the creativity. Do you agree?
Definitely. I think if you're not willing to try new things, you're never going to be able to develop as a creative individual or even as an individual. I think, like, I'm not going to sit here and preach weirdness as like that's a thing, but I think that part of being comfortable trying new things means trying weird things. Also,
Right.
normal. If you're
Well,
a weird person, and if you're a weird person, trying new things could be trying normal things. Like, I think that at the end of the day, I think
right.
you know,
Actually, this kind of
go ahead.
this kind of reminds me of, I don't know if you agree with this quote, but it's from Martin Scorsese. And it was the most personal is the most creative. So I guess it's not about being weird and making a fool out of yourself necessarily, but it's about, I think, what's personal to you. Like, say, it could be really anything. Like, your song that's deep in the entrails of your spirit, and you let it out in front of people because there's no shame. Like, you remove the shame. I think it's
Yeah,
more about removing the shame and allow
it's a
yourself to just
delicate line. I
breathe.
mean, I actually just recently composed a song, which I'm going to be hopefully recording and publishing online for everybody. It's probably the second song with lyrics that I wrote. It's kind of an interesting song. It's kind of like this melancholy song, but I think that to compose it, I don't know. Unfortunately, I'd say, fortunately, I've had a lot of people visit me and come through. My door's always open. Everyone has the code, so people can just come in whenever they want. So sometimes when I want to play, there's always somebody there. And sometimes I'm like, man, I don't want to be like spewing random garbage while there's just even my friend is sitting right there listening to me. There's like this like you're like getting out of your shell to such a level that like you kind of like you're sitting there wondering if the other person thinks you're good or bad, and like you're not really looking for that at that moment. So I think when it comes to songwriting, like, yeah, it is very hard to get over that shame, and maybe you don't even get over the shame. Like, I think there has to be some sort of like period. Like, it's just like anything, you want to work on yourself before you have something that you feel is good, and then you want to share it with other people. But sometimes, like, that experimentation process, you don't necessarily need to have witnesses or people looking, and even if they're not having it, and they don't have any bad intention. It's just that, like, the psychology of thinking that like you're doing it for somebody else, and then they're some sort of value judgment on you. Is
Well, for me, what kind of helped me, like, yeah, I'm by no means like I'm not really a musician. I just strum a few chords, but like actually get used to playing was playing for kids. Like that for me was sorry, did I lose you for a second? Yeah, I don't know. I feel like kids, you know, they won't really judge you. That gave me like a, you know, whatchamacallit,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
a
but
chance. Gave me a
mhm,
chance to create. Yeah.
sure.
To, well, not create, but you know, to fuck up.
Definitely. That's actually a very interesting method. I mean, I've never really engaged with kids on that level, but yeah, if that works for you, then it's great. I'm glad you're able to find that. Um, my dad always says, like, what's good music is like it sounds good. I think like we intuitively know what's good or bad, but sometimes just trying to like get out of your comfort zone of few random words, especially when you want to compose lyrics or you want to see. I don't know. Sometimes when you have an observer, you kind of feel a little disarrayed because you kind of feel like there's a, they're looking, they're kind of, you kind of feel like you're there to try to entertain them, and then you feel like you're like letting them down maybe if you're not that good. But
Mhm.
that's in terms of having witnesses. But hold on one second.
Right. Well, I mean, so
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry about that
when I
again.
was working at the special ed school, I was like, yeah, I can bring my guitar, play for the kids, whatever. And I really wasn't that good, because I was kind of just like getting used to it. And I realized, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Like
that's
no one
important.
really actually cares. Yeah, like I think it's like,
I think you
wow.
can't get good at something unless like you get good at being bad first.
Right. Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
no one learns guitar or any craft without fucking up a lot in the beginning, and I think like you have to
Right.
be able
Right.
to have
Exactly.
that space for that. And also, part of music is playing with others, and I think that's kind of the trifecta that I was trying to identify. Like for myself, I get bored playing with myself, but when I'm playing with others, there's always this constant novelty of like new embellishments and new iterations that I can go off of, different
Right.
modulations. And some people aren't so into it, and some people, myself, they really, I love it, and I'm able to feed off of other people's musical creativity, and hopefully I'm able to contribute to that too. And I
Hmm.
try my best that everyone should be able to feel comfortable doing something, even non-musicians like my roommates. Hello, Ben. We have shakers, and people are able to really get into it. But the point is that people should be able to feel comfortable trying to put themselves out there for other people to create something. And whether that, and I think part of the beauty of jams is that like you're not trying to sit there and make a song. You're just trying to enjoy this experience with others and kind of like
Hmm.
build towards some sort of like um, ethereal experience of just it's kind of like you're just in the moment and you're really kind of like that was pretty
Right.
damn good. And then like, hey, can I play that again? Like, nah, I forgot what that was.
That's really cool. I mean,
And there's a
I've
specialness
seen,
to that.
yeah, for sure. Like when the Monday night jams kind of got me into also like because I was just a chord player, a chord person, and the Monday night jams got me thinking like maybe I should try how to learn how to jam. So I literally Googled how to jam, and I came across a video of these people talking about it, and they're like it's a conversation. It's something that you're not trying to overpower. No one is trying to overpower the other. It's
Yeah,
really
yeah.
just like a symbiosis of, yeah.
So I mean,
So
you
that
have
was
to.
one thing that,
That's actually another thing worth noting that not every musician kind of knows the etiquette for jams, and that's like kind of hard to teach it because like I'll try my best to articulate kind of some of the etiquette. First of all, always listen to what everyone else is doing. If you can't hear everyone else, then chances are you're probably playing too loud. So you always want that if you're playing too loud, then you're subtracting from everyone else's uh, voice in a way. So you don't want to. It's always about you don't want to have good volume control. You don't have to play every note. You can let other people fill in that void themselves, being able to space out music. You don't have to giving space for other people to have a moment to kind of express themselves. That's very important too. Taking a step back and also taking a step forward at times. Like if you're a person who's on the sideline who doesn't feel so confident, having the audacity when there's a lull to be able to suggest. And I think that's part of it too. And the thing about a jam is that even if you're really bad, chances are the other musicians will compensate for what you're doing. So if it's really, really bad, they'll probably like interject a little bit and kind of like spin it, but not in a way that like. And I think so to just kind of keep the flow smooth. So like, you don't need to feel ashamed. But it's a good way to put yourself out there. So you want to have good volume control. You want to have good spacing, giving people space, being able to know how to giving space, and then knowing how to also take space, um, and also being able to like follow. And I think some people they just lead too much, too hard, and then everyone's trying to chase up to them, but like they also aren't giving them the cues of being able to kind of anticipate changes. So you just have somebody like playing their thing and they're going on a tangent and they're not staying, there's no repetitiveness or pattern that people can identify. So it's extremely difficult in those situations to like anticipate change. So you want to be also, I hate to say it's repetitive. You want to like keep a certain baseline repetitive, and then you could have the build off slowly layered, and then people can navigate changes, and then you'll be out changing chord progressions. You'll change the rhythm. So there is etiquette to jams, and not every musician knows that etiquette or is good with that etiquette. And frankly, those musicians aren't so. They don't. I mean, they're really good performers. They usually it's the performers who aren't so good with jamming because they try to kind of like make everything a show, and they kind of just. I think at that point, they're really good at what they do, and I'm not going to deny there's lots of talented musicians, but I guess they lack the ability to play well with others sometimes, and that doesn't like musically translate well. But also,
but I think even that, right, sure, that's I hear that. I also think that some of these things, like for new jammers, does come with practice. Like I've messed up. Like there were times I was doing too much, and you have to realize you can't be hard on yourself because you will mess up. Like you don't
also,
always.
Yeah, like so that's a good point. So what you should do is listen in that situation. Like
exactly.
When I say listen, I'm saying like chances are like the other musicians may ask you to lower the volume sometimes, or maybe they'll just like try to pause you for a moment. Don't take that personally. It's just to be able to provide the environment to kind of flow without dampening it too much. Because like the last thing you want is like you're doing a jam, then someone just starts hitting a trash can with a metal bat. Don't get me wrong, there's a musical component to that, but chances are like
there's a time to play to the that.
Yeah, I'm sure maybe if you want to do it at the end or that you can fit it in, but chances are hitting it on every beat maybe won't make the music sound so well.
That'd be so great.
But
yeah. Wow. Very cool. Very, very cool. So, can I segue on to the next topic? What inspires you?
Oh, that's a deep philosophical question. I don't know. I think a lot about life, and I never internalize a lot of it, and I think that's my biggest shortcoming. Like, I need to do a better job at like answering these questions. So, what inspires me? I like to say sincerity, but like I want to reinforce that for you better. I really appreciate people who are genuine. I think like I think people, when they say something and they mean it, I think is something that I really appreciate because it really saves a lot of distraught in some sense. And I think a lot of the, I don't know, I think sincerity and genuine and being a genuine person, that's something that inspires me. And also, I think people who are open to hearing ideas that they may not agree with is something that I also very much appreciate in people. So I think you can't really have a good conversation with anybody if they're not willing to be able to kind of comprehend yet an alternative viewpoint. And I'm very blessed that I have a lot of friends who are fairly open-minded, that they're willing to embrace ideas that they don't agree with or they don't practice.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Very, very cool. Interesting. Very, very nice. Any personal projects?
Yeah, I have a few that I'm working on. So I had this idea. I wanted to do a concept album for. I called it the rock opera, but it took more shape the project. Now,
oh my god, I am waiting so.
I'll tell you what it is. So I wanted to do.
Tell me a little bit about it, but tell me more.
Sure. So I mean, I can tell you the story of it. I'll just tell you this. I'll tell you the project. The project is I want to I think the Alter Rebbe's birthday or his yard site by September. I wanted to do a musical concept album that musically encapsulates his story, and then between each song narrates the story of his life. I don't, I mean, I didn't, initially I didn't have a person, and I had a hypothetical person in mind. I want to be able to express music in emotional capacities that aren't usually articulated with words. I think that there's a lot of nuanced emotional capacities that music can help conjure, but frankly, we don't experience much. So I think setting a time to be able to kind of like hear music that people wouldn't call happy, people wouldn't call sad. It could be melancholy, it could be triumphant, it could be perseverance. Like there's a lot of different subtleties, and I mean I have to kind of build my emotional vocabulary better to kind of articulate what those experiences are. Some of them can't even be put to words. You know, like knowing that like you tried really really hard and you succeeded, or maybe you know the endurance, the struggling endurance to persevere in some sense. So here, I think so. I spoke to a few people, and I wanted to do it in I didn't want to do it in English because I think when you put words to it, it kind of may distract from like the sound. And like I want people to hear sound, but I don't want them to articulate words. It's kind of like I want them to hear the sound and be able to feel what that is. But I feel like if you put that into words, it may
do you know that
detract from that.
reminds me of? Right. But do you know? Sorry to cut you off, but do you know what that exactly reminds me of?
No,
Have
no.
Have you ever seen this movie? Okay, so this is actually my favorite movie in the world. You might not know this. It's called Requiem for a Dream. And if you know the song, do you know the movie?
No, I don't.
Yeah, Requiem for a Dream. So it's just there's no words to that movie. I mean, it has words in it, but there is no words to how to describe what you feel. And the tune for the movie, the theme song is called the Lux Eterna, and it's actually that kind of inspired my Instagram name because the eternal light. So yeah, but anyway, that was like that song. Honestly, when I hear it, I'm not sure if I'm exactly copying what you're saying, what you mean, but there's no words that describe that song. There is no word. It's just like it's like a cathartic outpour of emotion every time I hear that song.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
just
I think that's what makes music special, that it's able to transcend cultural language because the experiences are somewhat universal. So I think being able to kind of make this project is something that I'm hoping to kind of achieve the universal experiences of certain non-culturally celebrated emotions. And I think people kind of, obviously we all know that, Western society focuses too much on happiness. But I think there's a lot of other complexities that kind of, success, perseverance, a purpose. What's the emotion of purpose? Or what's the emotion of suffering for a purpose? Maybe some sort of martyrdom in a sense. But I think being able to take it out of our language, it makes it easier for us to understand that universal emotional experience. Now, to make this project interesting, what gave me the idea is Neil Young actually has an album called Greendale, and he makes a whole story out of all these different songs about the small little town in America. And I always loved that concert and that album because I think nowadays, like we live in the musical world of singles, so everything's just one-hit wonders all the way, and you just have 10 random songs that have nothing to do with each other. But a good musical project is taking me through a journey. And I think what I want that journey to be is a story. And I didn't really have a person to kind of cement that story with. I wanted someone who was like kind of prominent and like suffered and kind of like maybe like sent to like Siberia or something like that. I wanted somebody with a complex lifestyle. So I kind of landed on the Alter Rebbe because one, I didn't know much about him. Two, I thought he would, he's been an interesting individual. And three, I was hoping that some people I could partner up with that. I think like Lady Jacobson, he's a good friend of mine. I'm gonna be able to like piece together some of the chapters of the songs, and then between each song, he's gonna be able to narrate part of the story. And I think that's kind of gonna be the project. I'm hoping to do this by I think by September. I forgot what the date is. That's the date where they celebrate, I think, the Alter Rebbe. So I thought that, and right now I have a book that I've been reading about him, so I can kind of comprehend a little bit more of his story, so I'm able to compose music to it. But it's going to be mainly based off of the accordion and probably like some more like folkish instruments.
wow.
Also, there's gonna be a few rules about the concert. There's gonna be no phones.
Mm.
Yeah.
I like that rule a lot, actually.
I mean,
That's a
I want it to be a very
rule.
different thing. I'm not going to necessarily call it happy, but it's definitely that if I'm successful with this project, I'm hoping that people can feel a certain sense of can be able to kind of tap into deeper parts of themselves that they may have always known was there but never really spoke to.
Mm,
That would be good.
yeah. Have you read The Old Man and the Sea? I haven't read it, but
Yeah.
it kind of maybe a little bit touches on what you're talking about. It's it's written by Ernest Hemingway, and it's really simple. It's just like the old man went to the sea, he fished a whale. That's how it's read. It's like really just a few sentences, but it's packed with emotion because he was reacting to the wordy, verbose, authors who got paid for every word they wrote. And he's like, this is bad. This is like not emotional. This is wrong. And the way he reacted to it was to write with as few words as possible. It's a novella, The Old Man and the Sea, but it's like very, kind of maybe touches on what you're saying, maybe.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. But I think that's kind of like I think that's kind of why we are seeing revision of like a revival of spoken word and poetry and things like that. Because I think fundamentally what people don't realize about poetry is not meant to be read as a book. It's meant to be read as a
Mm-hmm.
encapsulation of experiences that fundamentally is able to kind of successful poetry, if I were to articulate that, is able to kind of bridge the experiential gap between the author and the listener. And they're able to use words to share that
Mm-hmm.
experience. Which words do it and they have to do so by abstracting the concepts. So that's kind of what makes poetry very unique. And I think people don't really know how to read
Oh,
it
I'm a
either.
terrible
And also, it's
poet. Oh my God, I am. What?
yeah, but also you get to this weird point. If you can read poetry and it makes no sense to you, then it's shit poetry. Like poetry is 100% contextual based. So like, I think that part of the reason that people don't like poetry is because they've been fed bullshit poetry all their life. And I'm sorry to say this to you, but poetry that was written 500 years ago probably won't speak to you anymore. And I think that's why you see like a resurgence of like who's that real big feminist Indian woman, Rupi. I'm not really. I'm sorry, that wasn't the right necessarily adjective for her. She's a very female empowered writer, and some people call her trash poetry, but
Wait,
I
who is
think
this
it's
again?
actually Rupi something. Let me research it.
Oh, Ruby
On
Code. Oh my God, that's so funny that you say that. I heard of the Indian poet.
yeah, Rupi Kaur. Yeah, she's really good,
Oh my
and
God,
and I think
that's funny. That's funny that you mentioned her because I
I
heard
like her
her.
stuff a lot because poetry is not meant to be complex; it's meant to be simple. And I think like people have done it's like any craft. It's like they build and build and build and like it comes to a point where like you're just reading words. It means nothing to you and you don't understand what it's saying to you and you don't understand like and I think that's part of like high culture in a sense that like it's meant to be obscure because that way like the people who get it are the enlightened ones and the aristocrats and the people who don't are like the poor peasants. So like I think like every art craft there's a certain like cultural hierarchy that's placed into it. But I think good poetry is intuitive, self-explained, and if it makes sense to you. If it doesn't make sense to you, it's shit poetry. And by the way, it can be shit to you and great for someone else. I think poetry is meant to tie in,
Right.
it's meant to put words to experiences that you have. And sometimes there's poetry for different experiences. But I think that's kind of like, especially when we talk about like davening and lamentations, you have different ideas of like, they're basically poems. And obviously, they don't really make sense to us now because they were written like 500, 1,000 years ago, maybe even longer. And like usually the subject matters were more in line with our forefathers rather than our contemporary lifestyles. But that's kind of why I think we read it in Hebrew because we romanticize the Hebrew. We don't actually identify with the words. We identify with the heritage of the words. That's why we pray in Hebrew because like we love the songs being in our old tongue, not because we love what the words were like translate to mean.
Interesting that you say that because it's interesting that you say that. I'm gonna bring something up that might be a little bit off, but my boyfriend in Israel, David High, he tries to when he makes bread, he tries to actually feel the bread from, like, when you say hamotzi lechem and haaretz, it's to take out the bread from the ground. So he'll actually grind his flour, because no one does that.
If they do it for 500 more years, it's eventually going to be put into the Shulchan Aruch, whatever.
Into the
one
what?
thing is like, it's these small things that people do, and eventually they get codified into kind of the common practices of Judaism, and then eventually there's a theologian or there's some sort of respected authority then codifies it into the rules as like identifying what to do. Eventually, as it becomes more accepted. But I think that's very cool practice that he does, and I think people should do more of those things.
Well, yeah, because if you actually translate the word, everyone says hamotzi lechem haaretz, like hamotzi lechem haaretz. What does that mean? No one knows what it means. It's to take out the bread from the ground, because you grind, you have the grains in the ground, and you take it out. You don't just buy bread from the store. Everyone.
I probably have a broken translation for it. I translate it as thank God for the bounty of the earth. But I think the point being is that like I've been actually reading a little bit of the Zen Buddhism recently, and it's highlighted like an entire avenue of what Judaism is to me. Especially like when you see different cultures applying similar concepts, and but you're able to then understand why it's there to begin with. For like sometimes when you grow up with these sort of thought systems, you just do it because like it's part of the dogma or the institutionalization of the religion and the practices, so you do it because you're supposed to do it. Then you fail to understand why people have done it to begin with. And the idea is to have a certain sense of presence and to be able to kind of like, we throw around the word mindfulness now. Like that's like, you want to talk about a hot word? Mindfulness. No one knows what, we talk about it, but yet like we don't freaking embrace it, because mindfulness means being able to feel the presence and being grateful for that presence. And in order to do so, it's a personal thing. Now, part of what we have institutionalized has become from the communal and heritage perspective. That's also part of you. There's a time to go to shul and pray with other people and singing in a language you don't know. That's part of the heritage. That's part of you too. And that's part of your people. But at the same time, it's equally important to be able to kind of like make your own prayers sometimes. Like they call them the sutras, especially like I think the Indian and Eastern and East Buddhist religions, I guess philosophies. And it's just kind of like, especially because I think they have more meditative focused, their theological, philosophical constructs have better preserved this idea of meditation. Jews have also maintained meditation, but we have not maintained the practice of meditation. And I think that's kind of why Aryeh Kaplan has been one of the bigger people to bring that back to the light. Like, hey guys, we've been reading this the wrong way the entire time. Like, this is what it was meant to do. And then like he then pieced that together, because the practice, we've maintained the words, but we forgot the entire reason those words were there to begin with and how we were supposed to embrace those words. So sometimes I do that myself. I think like you just have like these one-line little poetry stanzas in a sense. And like, especially because I was reading this guy, Thich Nhat Hanh, he's a Vietnamese Zen Buddhist, and he's super cool, by the way. Like, there's like two prominent people that really—
What's his name?
Thich Nhat Hanh. He's like a 90-year-old. He's like a contemporary of Martin Luther King. He was part of the people.
Oh,
he's an extremely
young guy
person. He's like a world famous person.
You look—
Say it again.
Young guy.
No, he's not young, but he's brilliant.
Yeah.
And his whole idea is actually very similar to the whole Hasidus movement, but it comes from a different thought system. Is that like we want to be able to experience this presentness of oneness with God and ourselves and the Creator, and we need to be able to do that and remind ourselves. And there's different like ritualistic practices that we do to remember, and then that's part of why we do these. We say these things like, "Thank you, God, for this bread of the earth." There's people who don't have bread, and we're just appreciating that what the life that you sustained for us, and being able to just have that moment to really think about that. And whether it be, and we have all that in our tradition. It's just that we've made it so institutionalized that people fail to have that personal connection. So I think it's important for people to really find those personal ritualistic connections themselves. And I think that's why everyone should, I hate to use the word mitzvah because I want to make this more of a general thing for people, but everyone should have some sort of ritual practice that they believe is good and brings them some sort of like pause from the mundane and elevates them out of the mundanity. Like, I think that's kind of like my whole philosophy, that like we need to have I love rituals. And I think rituals aid us to kind of achieve levels of cognitiveness and tap into reserves of ourselves for different experiences. And there's different things that set off a ritual, like environment, cues. There's processions, like sometimes like like sequence of events. So everything we do reminds us about the next thing we need to do. Environments remind us of things we need to do. And time is also another important thing. Like not every ritual do we do all the time. Some rituals we do once a year, some rituals we do once a month, some rituals we do once a week, some rituals we do every day. And being able to identify that and understand why we do those rituals, what they are, and why they're important to understand that. But I'm going on a little bit of a rant. Did I answer your question?
No, it's awesome. It's awesome. I actually wanted to also add that Yehudi in Hebrew means, well, it comes from like lehodot, which means to thank. So someone who's like a Yehud is someone who thanks. That's like part of that's what we are. We are people who are who are grateful. It's like in our
I mean, yeah,
religion.
especially there's
Like
been a lot of
this
studies coming out now.
thankfulness. Yeah.
I think most of the a lot of the psychology studies coming out now saying like gratefulness is the key for improvement or something. More like, I mean, there's been like a lot of conflicting studies about willpower being finite. Everyone has this idea that like they have infinite willpower, they want to just get up and run a mountain, they could do it. But then like they realize that part of the biggest mental trait to be able to kind of, I think they've identified gratitude as like the number one thing that helps you aid into improving yourself, being able to achieve long-term changes, I believe. I don't know. I could probably
Wow.
search some studies,
Sure.
but I think it's kind of ironic that that's kind of like this the current psychology is parading. Like that's like now everything's about great gratitude. But
Oh, tell
and it's
me
hard. I
about
mean,
it.
it's
It's
not
like
easy to be it's not easy to be
yeah.
grateful. It's not easy because you got to constantly remind yourself, and it's very easy to get caught up in shit. So that's why we have this crap. Rituals are meant like the reason we have rituals is because we are numb and we forget. So we, in order to be able to kind of remember, we have rituals that help us achieve these cognitive states. Otherwise, we'll just live on, eat shit, die, right?
That's one way of looking at it. Well, anything else you want to add? Because we're just about.
I don't know. I think that's part of it, but I just to kind of on the Zen part, I'll wrap up the point that it's very interesting because I think Hasidism has embraced a lot of the Zen practices in its own theological, cultural context. They're not. I mean, it's not like they had. I think they came out from different places, and that's very unique. But there was a line that I was reading on the wiki. I've actually been Wikipediaing a lot about the Hasidic movement because I love just getting the the unbiased perspective. I hate to say it like that because some people will like argue like Wikipedia is not a good source. How do they know? I don't want. I want what it says there. I mean, not everything there needs to be true. But I like it as a baseline to just get some sort of like neutral, not flavored, not biased. I don't need someone. I want what does the encyclopedia say about this? And like it's kind of interesting because it takes you out. You're then able to like look from outside into who you are in a sense. So what's very interesting about the Baal Shem Tov, and I'll read this to you, and then you'll understand how um, you understand how closely this is to some sort of like I wouldn't say Buddhist because it's not necessarily the same. I mean, it uses its own cultural context and linguistic and cultural cues to kind of identify it, but it shares the same universal truth. And I'm going to read this to you now, and I think it's such a beautiful line. This is on the Wikipedia page for the Baal Shem Tov. All right. So this is on. I'll read this part. The later developments of the Chassidim are unintelligible without the considerations of the Baal Shem Tov's opinion concerning man's proper relation with the universe. True worship of God consists of cleaving to and the unification with God. To use his own words, now Wikipedia is quoting the Baal Shem Tov. I don't know what the source is on this, but the ideal of man is to be a revelation himself, clearly to recognize himself as a manifestation of God. Mysticism, he said, is not the Kabbalah which everyone may learn, but the sense of true oneness, which is usually as strange, unintelligible, and incomprehensible to mankind as dancing is to a dove. However, the man who is capable of this feeling is endowed with genuine intuition and is the perception of such a man who is called prophecy. According to the degree of his insight, from this it results, in the first place, that the ideal man may lay claim to authority equal, in a certain sense, to the authority of the prophets. So the idea is that, like, I don't know, what do you think of that?
I think it's pretty prophetic. It's interesting. It's very interesting. I don't think too many people have really reached that. these days because we don't really have prophets today.
Well, that's the whole other can of worms. That prophecy does exist nowadays, but we have conflated what that word means with clairvoyance. People look at
Okay.
prophecy and they think future tellers, people who can see the future, people who can talk to God. So that's the problem, that we've misattributed what prophecy fundamentally means. Prophecy is just being able to get in line with the deepest level of your subconscious being. And at that level, there's some sort of genuine intuition that is, you could argue, is connected to the creator, or it is the creator manifesting itself in your mind. So there's different ways of looking at it, whether it be that your mind is creating this idea that you're connected to the creator, or whether the creator is actually connected through that subconscious reality of who you are at that moment. Or maybe they're both the same thing. How about that? That's what I believe.
Interesting.
I always my theology and philosophy is that we are thinking of our own imagination. It's the perspective that people use prophecy wrong.
Mm.
It exists nowadays, but not all. First of all, it's not to say that anybody who trips out on acid is a fundamental prophet, because there's a level of, there's different levels of insight that people can derive. So the better you're able to take a very metaphysical experience and codify that into the real world, the better of a message you can actually achieve. And actually, I was just watching the Netflix documentary last night about they're talking about all of the psychedelics. And some could argue that psychedelics are very much in line with some sort of prophetic experiences, especially when you look at the ancient texts. And certain movements have derived from psychedelics, such as the peace movement, the hippie movement, the feminist movement, the equality movement. So a lot of those like unifying, like understanding that we're all here, we're all going to die one day, and like understanding that like this game we've erected, and trying to just appreciate the love of the world in some sense. That's achieved through these intuitive subconscious states of mind that people can achieve, but it's not something that's, first of all, I have a whole rant on this. I'll try to make it concise. Prophecy exists, but what you think prophecy means is not what people have. It is not the same thing as it is. So, as I said, people like to use the word prophecy meaning an authority of clairvoyance, which means that you can know the future. It also means that you've achieved some sort of respectable authority. So, yes, when we talk about prophets from the old days, first of all, they were never listened to in their own timeline. So most of the time, people never listen to the prophets. That's the whole irony. that like we look back on them, we're like, oh, maybe they have a point about like not doing this fucked up shit. But during their timeline, everyone's like, what are you talking about? Get out of here, you bum, you hippie. And I think that's kind of like that's what makes a true prophecy is a good message that endures for generations. So sometimes you may have a good point, but like end of the day, are you speaking to generations of people in a way that they care to remember what you said? So I kind of look at it as like a consensus based application. So the prophets that we look back on, especially from the old books, we look back on them because they've achieved a level of universal good. They've achieved a level of godly message or whatever. Let me find the right word. They've tapped into a essential universal truth of good and God, and it's been affirmed and reaffirmed through generations. So if you want to come along now and like, hey, I'm a prophet, let's all do an orgy, then like you don't have that historical endurance. So it could be maybe you're doing the right thing. I don't know. I'm not going to say here. Maybe I'm not going to evaluate that or not.
It reminds me of a story that my friend told me. My friend works in a mental health clinic in Israel, and oh my God, she told me about this individual who was convinced that he was Mashiach. Convinced, like convinced, like
thing. Yeah,
there was
I had that.
no way to deter. Nothing could change his mind. Nothing. He was set in his ways. He did whatever he could to convince. That was his issue.
So I actually
that was why he was
like that myself. I kind of like I tripped really hard once, and that idea crossed me too. I did.
It's crossed a lot of people. A lot of people.
Here's the thing.
Like,
what if he is Mashiach? Like I think this is a part of the point I want to drive home. We put so much baggage on that word. It's basically the hopes and dreams of hundreds of generations, and we don't even know what the hell it looks like. But the point being is, if he was the Messiah, what would he be doing? How is he making the world a better place? So I think those are the better questions that we need to be able to ask. Like, okay, you've had this very profound experience of being able to heal the world. Okay, how are you going to do it? Good, do it. I mean,
Mhm.
instead of, I think it's we've kind of like elevated to a level of kingship rather than we've elevated it to a level of responsibility. Like everybody has the power to bring Mashiach. Everybody is Mashiach in a sense. Everybody has the power to make the world a better place. So are you doing your part? And I think if everybody looked at it that way, and instead of like looking at it as this authority, I think waiting for. I think the point being is that like this is where my like this is where like my heresy is gonna come in. I'm gonna have to. I don't want to quote my. This is from a scholar of a friend of mine. I'm gonna have to keep his name anonymous. It's like, who's the false Messiah? The Messiah that comes. That we have to realize that like the utopia future isn't something that we just bum around waiting for some dude to kind of pick us all up. Something that we actively have been creating, recreating every day of our life. Every time we get out of bed and say we're gonna make this, we're gonna leave something for the next generation to inherit, and hopefully they'll have less of our problems. And that's what every generation does, and it's what every generation is going to continue to do. So I think like we look at we've pent up too much baggage on these concepts that we feel that people can actually be able to live up to them. And no one can be a prophet. No one could be prophets do exist. And I hate this like clusterfuck that people play with it, because like on one hand, every word that someone's a prophet from God is affirmed, and like we can't argue with, right? But then like you have a recognized Jewish authority, and like they don't have prophecy, but they have like Ruach HaKodesh, or they have like all these other like pseudo states, because we don't want to give them the canon. Here's the historical time period for that sort of practice has subsided, but we still very much know that there's intuitive states of mind that you can kind of like understand the cognitive essence of the subconscious reality of who you are and tap into Godhood in a sense. And I think that's something that everybody can do. Now, in terms of like taking out a good message and taking out something that is being able to change the world for the better, that's something that only a limited amount of people can do. Because you have to be extremely articulative. You have to be able to kind of like, especially if you've had these tripped out states of mind, the metaphysical reality is overlaid with the physics of the real world. So then you have this intense experience, and you kind of let your subconscious talk to you. And hopefully, if you're able to understand what it's saying, if you listen closely, you'll be able to figure out what you may need to do for yourself, and sometimes maybe for an entire people. And that's really where the world prophet comes in. When it's someone who's been able to kind of like understand a certain godhood of a message from the subconscious or the collective subconscious, and be able to kind of transmute that into and articulate that into the words that we are able to use, employ, and then develop on. And if they have shit ideas, then we forget about them real quick. But if they have good ideas and they're remembered, then chances are there's probably something good there. And that's the way I look at it.
Wow. Powerful stuff. Very powerful. Very nice. Thank you so much for everything and for sharing your ideas and your time.
I want to share one more thing on this.
Go for it.
This is a very deep idea. I've only like articulated it a few times. I didn't write it down, but when I was in that like psychosemantic state of like thinking that for a brief moment I was Mashiach, I realized a few things. I realized that like every time somebody, I'll try to articulate this profoundly. It's really hard to reinforce with evidence, but every time somebody judges the world, and they say it's good or bad, they're actually saving the world in a sense, because each person is an entire experience of the universe. And every time that they're able to feel positive about this and judge the world favorably, and especially when, there's a certain salvation, I'd say, that comes out of that. In a weird sense, like this idea makes no sense, but in the rational mind of the world we live in, with constructs, identification rules. But when you kind of subvert your mind into these psychedelic states or these altered states of mind or meditation, you realize that it's just all perceptions and nothing is really here, other than this fluidity of what we intuitively understand. And
that goes back to the Beatles. Strawberry fields, nothing is real. Strawberry.
So I think the way I like to look at it is every time somebody judges the world and they hold, is this good or bad? Is the world good or bad? Like, this is something that people can't even agree on. But I think every time people look, and hopefully, are you doing your part to share that with other people? Are you able to kind of have other people believe the world's a good place? And if you're able to help that, then you're able to help that person.
You pretty much have ESP right now, because I was gonna say something, the whole idea of helping people. Like when you really, don't know your place, like just think about how many people need your help. Like
I
it's
actually
like
was
life.
thinking a lot about this. I'm hoping to write an economic paper on the whole reality of COVID because we're talking about like newfound economics, just like very uncharted territories. No one really knows how this is going to blow over. But I was thinking that like, is it more important to be needed or to need others? And I think it's more important to be needed. So I mean, what are you doing to help people feel needed? That's an interesting question. I was thinking, what's more important, to need others or to have other people need you?
I mean, it's easy for us to sit here and philosophize about this, but there are people who really need us. Like there are people who have no limbs, there are people
I'm
who
not
are
talking
like,
about that, but I'm saying like I think when the whole like, I don't know, a lot of people are like kind of sad and depressed now, especially because like they're not working and they're just mulling their time. Or are they sad and depressed because they feel they don't have what to contribute to other people?
mm,
I think so. Maybe like
right.
how can you help people contribute toward
Oh, by the way, what I just said was not like, I didn't mean to judge anyone going through depression or anything like
no
that.
no
I don't
no no I'm
that.
not no worries.
No,
I don't think
no one.
anyone took
I hope no one took it that way. I wouldn't think from
it
off
that
that.
way. But
Okay, good.
you're right. I mean, there are, and by the way, like, so, but the question is like, people need to have value, and they need to feel valued, and they need to have self-value, and I think they get that by being able to provide something to somebody else. And if someone doesn't have limbs, I'm sure they have loved ones. So I'm sure they're able to still write. And
Right.
as I mean, even people like terminal illness or things like that, those are very difficult situations for they understand. I've been reading a lot of philosophy on this, but fundamentally, like, this goes into like the whole man's search for meaning, and
Right. Oh, I want to read that so bad. That's
I
like my
think I think he quotes Nietzsche, and he says like a man who has a why to live can endure anyhow. And I
oh,
think
oh,
that
why? Got it.
yeah.
Oh, that's
So I
interesting.
think everyone I think part of the clusterfuck is that people may feel that they don't necessarily have a why,
Mm,
and I think that's why it's important to help. What are you doing to help to maybe needing others is more important than yeah, maybe that would help them out, right?
hmm
And there's actually this goes into like a whole philosophy about like charity, like how the poor man is actually doing the rich guy a favor because he's giving him the beef.
Right. Oh my God, that is so true. That goes back to like,
Without a poor person,
yeah.
that rich person couldn't experience that sort of um, what's that called altruism.
Well, that
So
goes back to, like in Hask. Hask is an amazing organization, but like they have the people who work in Hask, and like the people who work there are like, the individuals who they might have Down syndrome or whatever it is. They're like they're the people, like the clients are like elevating the people who work there to the highest of highs. Without the people who are, the holy neshamas,
yeah,
who need us, they are the ones who elevate us. Like, and that's just such a, like, to me, that always resonated with me.
if there's something that I'd like to share just before we hang up,
Sure.
I guess what inspires me, I guess I'd say this. This is a better answer. Um, to live in a world where everybody has something to learn and everyone has something to teach. I think that's a pretty. I think that's kind of. I said that a few times to people, and I think that's really what I believe. We're able to kind of find a world where everyone has something to contribute, and everyone has something to kind of need. I think that would be a very beautiful world in a sense. Um,
Amen.
I think it's a dark place where people don't need each other. I think that's kind of the reality we're kind of feeling sometimes,
Oh yeah.
or we're not needed. We don't
Yeah.
need others. So
I feel that too.
well, anyhow, I'm gonna hang up the call now. I'm gonna stop the recording.
Just one more thing, Erin, how do we reach you? Can you give us your email?
The email.
If you
Uh,
don't know, it's no.
sure. My email is aarondcohn@gmail.com. AARON, D like David, KOHN @gmail.com. And I guess I also have an Instagram if you want to
Cool.
follow that. But message Lily if you would want to follow me
Cool.
more.
Yes. My email is LILLYBETH930
Thanking you, Lily, for hosting
at
me on your
gmail.com.
podcast today.
Thank you so much, Erin. Of course. Thank you for your time.
Ciao.